Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. Today, we will be covering Kemio Disinfection and how it's being used in food industry. I welcome you all to this session. I will be presenting along with Joe, and Joe, who is our business development manager in US, and many of you on the call would be very familiar with him. My name is Shaurya. I lead the product management team at Palintest, and together we will be hosting this session. This session will be recorded, so you can always come back to this session at a later stage. And you can use the chat function if you have any questions. We can pick as we go through, and there will be a time for question and answers in the end. So we can always pick up your questions. Please drop that in the chat function. We've got a wide range of audience, a mix of end users and distributors as well. And it's great to see you all today here. So I'll start with the agenda. What we're going to be covering today is we're going to start with an introduction to Kemio, what's this about. Now, many of you would be familiar with the technology, and some of you, if you're new, it would be like an insightful session on understanding what Kemio is, how you can use it in the food and beverage applications. Then Joe is gonna deep dive into some of the key applications we have across our food and beverage processing industry, what parameters are offered, and the value proposition Kemio brings to the table. And finally, we'll be talking about what makes Kemio work the way it is, how we deliver all the advantages, the science behind the Kemio. So I'll start with why all of this comes from a crucial purpose, which is to safeguard water for everyone and every day. We want to make sure that our customers can ensure the water quality, but also as we grow, we are simplest to do business with. If you are one of our partners, we want to support you and provide the innovative solutions and make sure you feel supported on this journey. Here's an overview of our entire water testing solutions range. So we provide instrumentation which is portable in nature. As you can see, you can carry them out in the field, you can keep them on a bench. All of these enable you to test water quality really simply and high precision. You can get water testing, water quality results. These instruments come with a set of consumables. So for every test, you can use the set of consumables, which are also provided by Palintest. And finally, we have a data management software, Palintest Connect, which allows you to manage data on the cloud and use it for reporting and auditing. Now, the whole principle around the product lines is to make water testing as simple and precise as possible. They come with an intuitive touchscreen which guides the user step by step with minimal amount of reagent handling, and it helps you keep track of who is doing the test, where the testing is being done, with all the data management features on the instrument. Joe, you want to add anything here?
No, I think you've said it all well, very well. We're very proud of our electrochemical and photometer line, and also the release of the turbidity expert earlier this year, with expectations coming of the EPA approvals later this year. We're very excited about the whole line.
And so for today's session, we will particularly deep dive into one of our product lines, which is based on the electrochemical technology, Kemio. And we're going to deep dive into how Kemio is supporting the food industry. So what Cameo is, it provides a sensor technology that you can use to measure disinfection parameters, which are commonly tested in various stages during the food processing. So normally you would be using these disinfectants to sanitize your equipment, the wash lines. It would be also to do the cleaning in place and to make sure there is no contamination, the product quality remains to high standards. And that's where it's really important to measure the water quality. As the old saying, what you can't measure, you can't manage. So it's really important to have that data and make sure you are using that data to have the right decisions. Some of the key features that Kemio brings to the table. First of all, as you can see, it's portable in nature, which means you can use it flexibly, very close to your operations process. Really simple to use, which means in a food factory, operators who may not be specialized, they can also perform the test simply following the on-screen instructions. There's no crushing of tablet or a contamination, so you just put in the sensor, close the arm. So there's really minimal reagent handling involved in the whole setup, which means any person on the shop floor, on the operation floor, they can come in, do the test, get the result in 60 seconds, and move on to the next task. Now, there's a particularly one area where Cameo shines against all the other methods in the market, and that is that it works even in murky water. So even when the water is really turbid, and in this industry we see that the water levels sometimes they go up to 50 NTU or even more when it comes to the turbidity. But Cameo is not impacted by that, and we're gonna cover why it doesn't in the later part of the session. The on-screen instructions I have mentioned around like how it helps the user step by step and making sure that it's consistent across the various operators in the plant. And finally, to sum it all, you have the Palintest Connect cloud-based software to manage your data via reports and for auditing purposes. Joe, anything to add?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate one of the things that you said, and that is one of the features of the Kemio disinfection is the actual build quality itself. The instrument is IP67 rated, which means that it has water resistance and drop testing built into it. So, unlike some of the more temperamental methods that are out there, this instrument itself really thrives in some of the facilities in which we have post harvest washing or poultry, where you have, as Shuri has said, the NTUs, the environment can be very very harsh. Not the least of which is also that we've recently redesigned Kemia with a UPC, a USB-C connector in the back to make it again more water resistant and durable for some harsh environments.
Yeah, thank you. And to add on that, we have the arm, the Cameo arm, where the measurement happens. That is accessible for the operator. So in case of like a moisture getting in, you can simply wipe off the contact pads and make sure the continuity in testing. Right. So now we're gonna be focusing on our applications within the food processing industry. And there are various processes where the water quality is tested. We see particularly for Cameo these three areas where we have seen success, and Joe is gonna further deep dive into them. On a high level, these are categorized into post harvest, poultry processing, and beverage and bottling. So within the post harvest, it's for the ready to eat salads, which are typically found in supermarkets, and they are consumed by the consumers without any boiling step. And that's why it's really important that there's no bacteria in it. And to have that disinfection or to have that effect, you use sanitizer, you use chlorine, use various methods like PA to make sure the salad stays fresh until it's consumed. And hence, it is really crucial to monitor that, because with any disinfectant, it works in that sweet spot, not too high, not too low, which is what I would like to call the Goldilocks zone. If it goes too high, it's a health impact. If it's too low, it can mean that you have bacteria in your salad. In poultry processing, as you can imagine, there's lots of organic matter, and there is heavy contamination, which you can only counter by making sure you have a solid disinfection program and food hygiene system. Here again, the water is sanitized using various disinfectant, and the critical control points where you're ensuring the enough levels of disinfectants. And the third one, in the beverage and bottling, not only it's important for the food hygiene or the beverage hygiene, but also cause of the taste and the quality of the beverage. So make sure, if the chemical goes too high, then you start having a funny flavor in your drink, which is not anyone wants. Hence, you always want to ensure it's within that sweet spot of the disinfectant level. Typically, we see cold aseptic fill lines used in beverage and bottling industry, which is where you have disinfectants like PAA, which are widely used, and Cameo becomes a superior tool in monitoring those. Now I'll hand over to Joe, who will deep dive into these three applications, talk about how Cameo is used in these areas. Over to you, Joe.
Thank you, Sharia. Yeah, so and thank you for explaining that, and also thank you for breaking down the food and beverage applications or the food processing applications. We talk about it as a global term, but as you'll see in a few seconds here, they while the act of disinfecting itself is universal among the food and beverage processing, the process by which you do that and the disinfectants by which you do that vary from situation to situation. So typically, chemio disinfection is used as a secondary application alongside the inline chemical dosing. And we use the chemio systems to independently verify the disinfectant levels at those control points, right? And so chemio is as many of you know, and Sharia will further go into the technical process of this, but Chemio is an electrochemical instrument which uses sensors to identify and quantify the disinfectant and the level of that disinfectant within the process. So the first thing that we do is we prepare the water sample by inserting a disinfectant sensor into the Chemio, and the sample is taken from each control point, which is what you see on that second stage there, where you're actually collecting a sample for your water testing. And the testing itself is very, very quick. As Sharia said, typically it's without any reagents. Simply insert the sensor into the sample vessel, close that arm, and within a couple of minutes, or a minute in case of chlorine, you'll be able to get your analyte and your residual that you're showing. And of course, to keep this, as you manage your disinfectant levels, you can adjust as you see fit or as is necessary to your specific application based on those test results. And then, I know that many times it's at different applications require the monitoring and the and the recording of those results at different levels. You have that monitoring that is both intrinsically on the instrument itself. What the Kemio itself stores 10,000 test results, but you also have access to the Palintest Connect, which is a cloud-based monitoring software. In the event that you need to, or your organization prefers to have a remote viewing of results, you can use that Palintest Connect to accomplish remote viewing of results at any time. So we're going to start with post harvest production process map, and this is where we see a lot of chemios being used. And when we say post harvest production, many of you may know, but just to reiterate, that really is your vegetables and your fruits and your salads that are coming off of the line into a processing plant. And within this, there are several washing stations and several uh, points that are control points within the process. Shuri has been so good for me to give me step-by-step examples for this process map, and you can see very clearly this where the sanitizer is. That is going to be your inline disinfection solution. We actually have a picture here of one of our post-harvest washing plants that has a sanitizer being used, and we use Kemio to identify the levels of injection for that sanitizer. So as you can see, the water comes in, the sanitizer is mixed with the wash water, and that wash water is used on that line. In this case, it looks like that may be lettuce there. So you actually have the disinfectant solution that is sprayed into on the lettuce itself, or whatever, the fruits and vegetables itself, to provide that disinfection step before it goes on to packaging and drying. And in the post harvest production process, you can see that there's 2 points in which are control points that are noted by these double pink stars. Both we need to identify and make sure that we have the right disinfection solution at the wash water station, and then also at the wash line, to make sure that our residual disinfectant levels are meeting what is necessary to act as a biocide from the organisms that we are trying to remove from the post-harvest production. I'm going to stop down here, and I will continue to stop down the different stages here. Does anybody have any questions with respect to post-harvest production and how Kemio can be used in this process? Okay, not a problem. We can go
Yeah.
right on to the poultry. Did someone have a? Oh, you're right. So in post-harvest production, I apologize, I forgot about this. So we have talked about this. So our applications is we have talked about that the throughout the post-harvest production process, the produce is washed, the water treated with disinfectants to kill pathogens and ensure food safety. And the folks that we are connecting for that application with post harvest are going to be your safety managers, your quality controls, your production supervisors, and operators themselves. So if you are a distributor on this call and you'd like to start focusing on using the chemios that you currently are familiar with as a food and beverage application, these are the folks that are probably best suited to connect to first. And with regards to the types of disinfections within post-harvest production, it can be in fact chlorine, free and total chlorine. You may be looking for free chlorine and parasitic acids. Chlorine, parasitic acid, and chlorine dioxide will have different environmental profiles and different capabilities, making it more advantageous for certain disinfectant uh, uh, elements to be used in the different production cycles themselves. In this case, with post-harvest production, chlorine, both free and total, is very commonly used. And the value propositions are something what Shuri had already kind of mentioned, which is mitigate the operational downtime, meaning that quick and accurate results will give you the answers you need to be able to adjust if necessary on the fly and not have to shut down operations costing money, right? And that leads right into the second point, which is supporting operational uptime. And then finally, we had the regulatory compliance and control. All of the Kemio, along with it being the results being held in the instrument itself, and also being able to be offloaded to a Excel file or a third-party cloud service. Each one of those elements has a chain of custody associated with that. So if and when you are audited, both in either internally or externally, you can show the method by which your water has been disinfected, and the results include date, time, user, and batch number by which this was tested.
Yeah. And we would also be interested to know how often you are testing or your customers are testing at the critical control points. We see a wide spectrum. It would be good to know what do you think is the right level of testing that's supposed to happen. Feel free to drop in the chat function.
Yep. So moving from post-harvest production to poultry, you can see this is a little bit different of a process here, and it's also it has more control points throughout the process. Again, noted by those double pink stars. So as you come as the poultry enters and leaves slaughter, there is opportunity for disinfection both on the slaughter and into the scaling. And then uh, once the poultry has been processed, it's then bathed by a shower, much like you saw that lettuce being processed on a conveyor belt and having a disinfectant shower placed upon that. The disinfectants are used there, as well as the final stage before packaging, which is the cutting, right? And with this, I had mentioned that different processes, different whether it be poultry or harvesting, they require different disinfectants because of the different environments. And realistically, where we see a lot of chlorine that's in your post-wash harvesting, we're going to see a lot of parasitic acid or PAA used in poultry processing. And the reason that is the profile of PAA, which is and that of fluorine, which is that there's so much organic matter within poultry processing that it would strip really any of the disinfectant capabilities away from chlorine, and PAA is a more powerful and stable disinfectant, which would allow for the continued disinfection of the poultry, even in a very high organic situation. Shuri, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I would in fact point out there's a misconception which even I thought in the beginning that you are disinfecting just the chicken or the poultry or the meat, but it's not only that. It's anything that makes contact, cause the bacteria they spread
Sure.
through water. So even your wash line, even the sprayers and the knives and anything that makes contact is also disinfected. And it's really important to understand that it's not just the food product we are talking about, but actually the entire process need to be sanitized.
Yeah, when we've been walking through some of the processing plants that we visited and we serve, typically there is a large rectangular bucket that has a chlorine or whatever solution in there, whatever disinfection. And as they go through using their utensils and knives and all of that, it all gets placed in that to be, A, cleaned after, but it's being disinfected at that stage before it's being cleaned. And even before we pull out at least in what I've seen, pull out a knife or a utensil, it is being pulled out of a disinfectant bath before it gets applied to the fruit, vegetable, or meat.
Yeah.
So on the applications, poultry processing involves multiple stages, as I had mentioned, such as the skating, the chilling, and the washing, through which many critical control points are served. And the same type of people are really looking at the poultry processing that are also looking at post harvest washing, right? So there's still the QA technicians, the sanitation workers, as well as the production supervisors and the maintenance staff. And again, to what Shori was saying, is not just a disinfectant for the product itself, but also the lines and instrumentation which touches that. Also mentioned earlier, the parameters that we're testing in poultry is typically not going to be chlorine, but more likely parasitic acid or chlorine dioxide, which it has an oxidizing power itself of 2.5 times of chlorine. So again, it's a very useful and powerful disinfectant from that stage. The value proposition is very similar. We do have product quality and the optimized chemical usage. I think this is important because if you're using some of these stronger disinfectants, and you are not spending money on other chemicals to do the place of this. So, you know, using a single disinfectant is optimized chemical usage versus using multiple disinfectants to try to accomplish the same goal. And of course, Kemio saves time because it's still a very, very quick testing process. And Shuri, I'm going to hand this one off to you because you actually have more experience in the bottling line process than I do. So I think you'd be speaking with greater authority on this one.
Of course. Thank you, Joe. Right. So, in the bottling and beverage industry, it's again really crucial to maintain the hygiene across the process. And in this, typically the cold aseptic fills are being used. So instead, you normally hear of the CIP where you're blowing steam on steel equipment. That doesn't happen in here because you have bottles, sometimes plastic bottles. So you don't use heat or steam to kill bacteria. You use cold aseptic fill lines. What it means is simply like the water is cold and it has PA as well. And you could use it to disinfect just the sprayers, the fill lines, as well, the caps of the bottles and the bottle itself. So it goes through a full process. Here you have a example of a full production line of a bottling plant wherein it takes the raw water, then the processed water, which is your ingredient water, but also the bottled water. They both are sanitized. And then the equipment is being disinfected. As you can see here on the right, there are a couple of points which are highlighted like the rinser, the bottle washer, the barrel crate washer, the cleaning in place, filler, capper. Or at these points, you could use the disinfectant and test when the disinfectant is at the right levels. We see PA really being used here widely. High levels of PA, I'm not talking in a single or double digit, it's more likely to be 600 to 1,500, 2,000, sometimes even upwards in that, depending on the process needs. And here, Cameo provides a big advantage because at very high levels of PA, within a minute you can perform the test, no reagents needed. You don't rely on titration, which is a time consuming, more complicated process, and you can quickly make the decision. So we covered the application And the persona very similar. You have the quality control managers ensuring the safety of the entire process. So there are two drivers in the whole production area. You have the production supervisor trying to get as much stuff out of the door as possible, while quality managers making sure that everything that leaves the door is of high quality. And that's where Cameo balances the needs of both these personas really well, at the same time giving you high accuracy to meet those needs while ensuring your process stays up has uptime so it doesn't stop and it continues to produce the high yield, which is what you want in a bottling plant. In bottling, it's not just about the hygiene side of it. Of course, you are making sure that you don't have bacteria growing, but also it's the aesthetics, the taste. So you need to make sure the right levels of disinfectants are being used so that the taste of the beverage is intact and the brand reputation as well. Really, really important. And we see like all the big players, whether you name it Coca-Cola, Heineken, they all rely on really robust processes to make sure that the quality remains to high standards. And as I discussed about the time savings, like compare Cameo side by side on a titration kit, and it will beat it every time because it's so fast, highly accurate, very versatile, goes all the way from low levels of 5 ppm of PA all the way to 4000 ppm of PA. Right. Anything to add, Joe, before I jump on to the next section?
No, sir. I think that's well said.
Okay. So, final section of this presentation today, after which we'll summarize and do the question answers. Feel free to drop in your questions and we can cover that in the end. Joe summarized and deep dive into how Cameo was being used in various processes like the post harvest, the beverage bottling, and the poultry processing. Now we're gonna discuss how it happens, what's the science behind it. So really you are using the sensor, the Cameo, and the water sample to arrive at the concentration of the water quality. What's in your water? The levels of the disinfectant. It's reported in ppm, parts per million, whether it's chlorine, it's PA, or chlorine dioxide. What are sensors? These are the disposable strips, the consumable that comes with the reagent, pre-dose reagents. So you don't have to calibrate it in the field. It has everything to make sure as soon as you put it in Cameo, it does the test and gives you a reading. The science behind is based on electrochemistry. So normally you see the visual kits or the photometric kits, they work on color change. You add a reagent, they change color. In Cameo's case, the reagent is actually generating electric current on the sensor surface, which is what Cameo is measuring. So here's a overview of what's actually going on in the sensor. Now, as a user, you need not know the science behind it. All you can do is performing the test. But for other people who would be more keen to know actually what's making this happen, this is a really insightful slide presenting you how, for example, the PA sensor is used. So the parasitic acid in the water that will react to iodide, which is dosed on the sensor surface. So in this example, you have potassium iodide dosed right here on the electrode, and creates a reaction where triiodide is formed, and this will reduce to generate a current on the surface. The higher the current, the higher the level of PA. So there's a calibration in the instrument which will correlate from the current level to the levels of PA. And it's really sensitive to even small changes of current, which allows it to measure the disinfectant to a really high degree of accuracy. Now, to summarize it all, I've got a video here which shows you exactly like what's going on, the things we have just discussed right now. So I'll play it. And as you can see, the sensor arm goes with the water sample. And here you see what's actually happening on the sensor. So the PA is reacting at the sensor surface, and then it goes towards the electrode. So the bottom bit is the sensor surface, and at the electrode, it has generated a current. Now, the more of those green molecules you are seeing the PA, the more they form, the more the current. And that's what Kemio is measuring. And there you go on the screen, you have the results in parts per million or milligrams per liter. Any questions, feel free to drop in the chat and we can pick up as we go. Joe, anything to add here?
No, sir. I think that's a great representation of the actual technical side of that.
Yeah. Great. So the final slide I have to share today is actually an example, a real life example of how Cameo is being used in a salad production line. This salad production line is manufacturing lettuce, the ready to eat salad, which goes into some of the really big supermarkets of the country. And it's really crucial for them to ensure not only they pass the audits, but also ensure that the salad can last through the entire supply chain from farm to fork. It ensures its freshness. And that's where we see the Cameo being used in the critical control processes. So before using Cameo, they were actually using a photometric method to verify that. But when they compared Cameo versus the photometric method, they realized that it's much more accurate. As you can see here, the chart below, the variability is caused by the previous method. And the reason for that is the water sample is really murky and is filled with organic matter in the salad washing line. So when Cameo was deployed for the trial, they realized how repeatable it is despite the presence of particles which are impacting the turbidity of the water sample. They were testing somewhere in the range of 40 to 60 parts per million. And with the photometric method, you were doing the dilution step, which also contributes to the error. Whereas with Cameo, there was no dilution step because it goes from 0 to 100 ppm on the same sensor. Hence, you were able to get a more accurate result without doing the dilution step. We saw the consistency across the operator because it removes the technique base. So you're not crushing a reagent, you are not mixing it. All of these are potential sources of human error, especially like operator who is doing a dozen jobs in a day. They may not be the expert in water testing. Cameo really simplifies the testing for them. And as you can see here, like the speed, which comes again and again with 1 minute to get the chlorine results. And you get both the chlorine, the free chlorine and the total chlorine in a single test. So all of this made Cameo the choice, the method of choice in this particular application. Joe, anything to add here?
Yeah, I do a couple of things actually. So I want to hit back on what you exactly had said and or amplify what you had said. For those individuals who are not as familiar with this particular instrument, the Kemio, as we are, one of the things that we touched on but didn't really drill down on was the ease by which the testing is done. We've said that it's fast and that's a benefit for sure, but we be aware that when you do the testing, whether it be for chlorine dioxide or chlorine or parasitic acid, all of the testing, excuse me, the entire process, the step-by-step process to test for whatever analyte you're testing for is on that LED screen that you see in front of you. And I say that because that third point of more consistent across operators, and that we didn't have the dilution step by switching from the photometer to the Kemio. Those two things are hugely important, especially in an environment in which you may be constantly changing out who's actually doing your water testing, and being able to quickly train individuals on this instrument and to have that step by step direction on the screen, and by removing some of these steps that are either prone to error or subject to individual interpretation. Removing those types of things from your process ultimately gives you that more accurate number, and as we said in the earlier steps, speeds the process by which you can confirm and quantify the results that you actually need.
Great. So we are towards the very end of our webinar. We will open up for question and answers. Just to summarize, we covered today how Cameo is supporting the food industry when it comes to water quality and disinfection testing. We will share this recording to you so you can always refer back to it. If you come across any new parameter which is also being employed in the food industry, we would love to hear that. Please drop in the chat function. And you have the contact points here. So I have shared the email address of Joe directly, or you can drop in any of your queries to info@palintestusa.com. We'll wait for 2 minutes and see if there are any questions. Joe, please could you read out if there are any questions, as
Yep.
I can't see the chat directly.
Let's see. So let's see here. How often do you? Okay, so Emma was asking anybody that's an end user here, how often do y'all typically test at critical points? So just a question from us. Lou, I see you have your hand up. Do you want to drop that in the chat, or you just want to give a shout out?
Yeah, I feel you would have to use the chat function.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Uh,
Joe, so like based on the experience, some of the questions I get around the best practices,
yep.
like what kind of best practices would you suggest to the users who are in the food application using Cameo?
Sure. Yeah, I think one of the greatest the greatest things that could interfere with test results is actually simply the moisture and the
Yeah.
inherent wetness of a food of a food and beverage processing environment. And so I would encourage everyone to clean their chemios every day by taking a microfiber cloth and making sure that those contact pads, which are inside the arm of the instrument, are clean and dry. You also, I keep a stack here of lint-free alcohol wipes. So once in a while, I would know once a week or so, I would take a lint-free alcohol wipe, open up that the arm, and wash off that, wipe down those contact pads with, IPA, lint-free IPA wipe. And then also, I think the most common thing that we should do on a day-to-day basis, be given in the fact that in a food and beverage line you are testing so frequently, we all of our instruments, Kemio instruments, come with check standards, and I would make sure to run those check standards on a daily basis to make sure that the machine is calculating the way that it should. And then I'd further recommend that on an annual basis that those instruments be sent in to either a Palintest or a approved service provider to make sure that you go through an annual preventative maintenance on that to make sure that the firmware is accurate, to make sure that the battery is holding charge, all of those things that could prevent or create any issues in the field.
Great. Thank you very much, Joe.
You're
Very
welcome.
valuable insights. Uh, so before we stop, should we just check the chat function again and see if there are any
Yeah,
further things to cover?
I don't see anybody dropping any questions in the chat. That means we have apparently done a great job, Shuri, and we have answered any questions that anybody may have whatsoever.
Yes. And feel free to reach out on the contact points here on the shown on the screen if you have any question regarding our products at a later stage. Thank you all
Absolutely.
for being here today and stay tuned because we have further more webinars coming later down the line.
Excellent.
Thank
Excellent.
you.
Thank you all very much.